got some pretty outrageous reporting from one of my favorite local journalism publications, the Miami Herald. As you know, we cover Alligator Alcatraz, the concentration camp that is still located smack dab in the middle of the big Cypress National Preserve in the middle of the Everglades. We cover that pretty extensively here because not only is it in my backyard, but it's obviously a shining example of how absolutely disgusting the Trump administration's immigration enforcement policies are. And this latest reporting I wanted to share with you immediately because it's beyond alarming. This is the title of the article. Hundreds of Alligator Alcatraz detainees drop off the grid after leaving site. And this title actually doesn't even do the substance justice here. Here we go. As of the end of August, at the end of August, which is what, 3 weeks ago or so, the whereabouts of 2/3 of more than 1,800 men detained at Alligator Alcatraz during the month of July could not be determined by the Miami Herald. The whereabouts of 2/3 of more than 1,800 men detained at Alligator Alcatraz during the month of July could not be determined by the Miami Herald. The Herald got the names from 2 detainee rosters, and then they tried to determine where these men were located. And here comes part of the breakdown. Around 800 detainees showed no record at all on ICE's online database. More than 450 detainees listed no location and only told the user while you were looking on the database, call ICE for details, in quotes. According to immigration attorneys, that was incredibly vague. It could mean that the detainee is still in the process of being processed, or could be in the middle of a transfer between 2 detention sites, or is about to be deported. No clarity. Call ICE for details. And you and I both know if we were to call ICE for details, not only would you not get somebody answering the phone, but they would have no details. Now, the article hypothesizes that maybe some of the men who couldn't be located are still technically physically located at Alligator Alcatraz, because Alligator Alcatraz has this weird status, although it's really not weird in the traditional senses of the word. It's more because DeSantis has been lying to the federal courts and to the public about what's going on with Alligator Alcatraz. But anyway, Alligator Alcatraz is purportedly a state-run facility, even though it's supposed to be receiving federal dollars to detain and hold and process and kind of create this funnel for deportation, detainees that are in the federal immigration system. Huh? And Florida, as a state, doesn't maintain a lookup system like ICE does, right? Like the federal immigration system does. And so that's why the Herald's saying, hey, they could still technically physically be located at Alcatraz, but to hell with it, nobody actually knows. Nobody knows. I mean, this is the version of disappearing people. You think if I go and I knock on the door at Alligator Alcatraz and I say, I have a name here. Can you confirm that this man is located here? A, you think they're going to tell me the truth? And B, you think they're actually going to know? They won't. So here's what's interesting, because as you know, on August 21st, a district court judge here in the Southern District of Florida told Alligator Alcatraz, not only do you have to stop your operations, but you have to start dismantling the property. Now, a federal appeals court on the 11th Circuit actually blocked that judge's decision, and we're going to get into the nuance of that in just a second. But by late August, the number of detainees at Alcatraz fell to below 400 people. It used to be obviously way more, right? I mean, think about it. If by late August we're down to less than 400 people, but during July we had more than 1,800 people, that's a huge precipitous drop in the number of people that are physically located at Alligator Alcatraz. And the article does also say that maybe some of the people that can't be found is because they've been deported, either deported through ICE or voluntarily self-deported. But again, it's amazing. You just want to know the information, people. It's a transparency that's lacking from this administration that not only generates the fear and the confusion, but it's just the big middle finger to the face of Americans, right? It's like, how hard is it to maintain accurate records transparent records about the whereabouts of human beings, people. So a local immigration attorney by the name of Alex Solomiani, who, by the way, is a fantastic immigration attorney down here in Miami. One of his clients is a 53-year-old man from Guatemala. Now, he had been in the United States since 2001. His client was sent to Alligator Alcatraz after he was traffic stopped by the Florida Highway Patrol in Palm Beach County in July. So Alex Solomiani, finding out that his client is now at Alcatraz, he filed a motion to be released on bond. Why? Because his client from Guatemala had been in the United States since 2001, was working as a house painter, and was married with children. In other words, a contributing member to society and our community here. So when Alex shows up at Chrome Detention Center, which is an immigration facility in Miami, on August 1st, he expected to see his client for that bond hearing, right? Oh, but no. Guess what he finds out? A government attorney says, sorry, your client was accidentally sent to Guatemala instead of going to Chrome. Now, I want you guys to understand the proximity of this. So Chrome is right on the outskirts of civilization in Miami-Dade County, as far west as you can go before you basically hit the Everglades. And where is Alligator Alcatraz? In the Everglades, right? So they're actually much closer to each other than you think. And instead of taking Alex Solomiani's client from Alligator Alcatraz and bringing them to Chrome, no, they just actually took him and put his ass on a plane and took him to Guatemala instead. Just stop and think about that for a second, right? So now Solomiani is now having to work with ICE to get his client returned to the U.S. You think that they're actually putting any type of exigency or urgency on that? Hell no. Here's another example. Michael Borrego Fernandez, a 35-year-old Cuban national, detained at Alligator Alcatraz for nearly all of the month of July. He was actually one of the detainees who sued the Trump and DeSantis administrations because there was no access to his legal counsel when he was at Alcatraz. I've explained that lawsuit here at this news channel. It's one of 3 lawsuits that have been pending against Alligator Alcatraz. On August 6th at midnight, Borrego was moved to Chrome. Oh, instead of going to Guatemala. Thank you for the small miracles. But then he was transferred around Labor Day, so that was at the beginning of this month in September, to Otay Mesa Detention Center, a privately run migrant detention center in San Diego. So then he falls off the communications radar. Borrego is not in communication at all with his family. His family is desperate. He has medical issues. They don't know how to find him. They haven't heard from him. They have no idea where he is. So after more than a week and some change, they finally hear back from Michael Borrego. And where is he? Not at Alligator Alcatraz, not at Chrome, not in San Diego, but he was deported to the Mexican state of Tabasco. I mean, people, it's Keystone Cops level incompetence, but it's dealing with people's lives, some of whom are not supposed to be in custody, some of whom are not supposed to be deported, some of whom have been trying to go through the system the way that they were, quote, told to go through the system. And then, frankly, all of them deserve due process according to the U.S. Constitution. None of them is getting due process. I promised that we would briefly talk about what's going on with Alligator Alcatraz legally. And this is a very interesting kind of nuanced thing that's happening. Okay, so that really smart federal district court judge, Judge Kathleen Williams, enters that injunction saying you got to stop operations at Alligator Alcatraz. You cannot keep on adding on to it with the generators, et cetera. And that was in the environmental impact lawsuit that was brought by the Friends of the Everglades and the Center for Biological Diversity and the Indian tribe, the Miccosukee Indian tribe. Okay, so that happens, right? And then, of course, the government appeals. And the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, in a 2-1 decision, says, we are actually going to stay. We're going to block that federal judge's order, and we're going to allow the facility to run. But let me be clear, right? The reason why they were allowing Alligator Alcatraz to stay open while the lawsuit was pending is the following analysis. And be clear, DHS has already been moving detainees out of Alligator Alcatraz, as you just heard from the Herald article. They're down to less than 400 now as of the end of August. Why? Because then they opened a defunct prison that wasn't being used in northern Florida, and they're just taking them there, which you can also imagine the conditions are horrific there. But they're like, it's, steal from Peter to feed Paul. We're not going to do Alcatraz anymore. And the Everglades, we're just going to send them to this horrible prison in northern Florida. Now, this is the analysis from the 2 judges on the federal appeals court that decided that they would allow Alligator Alcatraz to continue to operate. They said, state and federal officials are likely to succeed in showing that Alligator Alcatraz is not subject to the National Environmental Policy Act, which was the federal law that required that an environmental impact study be done before Alcatraz was even begun being built. Why? Because Alligator Alcatraz is a state-operated facility and Florida has not yet received any federal reimbursement for the cost of running the site. I guess I don't have to tell you that the 2 judges that ruled in favor of Alligator Alcatraz are both Trump nominees and appointees, and the one judge who dissented, Judge Adalberto Jordan, is an Obama nominee. But here's what's wackadoo, right? So the analysis is, because this Alligator Alcatraz, quote, state-run facility, even though, remember, we've walked through this, right? It's got federal detainees, federal immigration policies, federal agencies like DHS and ICE and others, CBP, right? But it's state-run. DeSantis has been using Florida taxpayers' money, $450 million of it, to be able to do this. Why? He's promised Florida taxpayers, hey, don't worry about it. We're going to get reimbursed by the federal government. But here is where DeSantis has backed his ass into a corner. Florida can either pass up the federal reimbursement money for hundreds of millions of dollars spent to build and operate Alligator Alcatraz, or DeSantis can take that federal money and subject itself to an environmental review pursuant to, the National Environmental Policy Act, which would then effectively shut it down. But here's what's messed up about this 2-to-1 ruling from the federal appeals court, right? You're going to let it run and operate in the meantime while this appeal is pending. And even if these environmental groups succeed on the merits, meaning on the substance of the appeal, the damage is already going to be done to the environment, 1, and 2. What if they've moved all the detainees, either deported their asses to other places or just moved them to another facility like DeSantis has been doing? The damage has already been done in myriad ways, right? But if you're DeSantis, what do? Are you going to leave Florida on the hook for $450 million plus? Because you can also imagine, right? There's still going to be lawsuits pending on the damage that has happened as a result of Alcatraz, not only to the people, but to the environment and to other, interested plaintiffs. You're going to take the money, and then you definitely violated that environmental protection law. And what a dumbass, truly. Him and that Florida Attorney General, James Utmeyer, sounds, very Nazi-esque, Utmeyer. Do you think they thought this through? Of course they didn't. But you know what? I'm a taxpayer in Florida. It's less about the money. It's more about the people. It's the people over the profits that I care about. I want to focus on the people. And the fact that they can't find hundreds of detainees now, I get no comfort if it's like, oh, they're there, but we just don't have them registered. I have no idea what the excuse is, but we should all be concerned that disappearing continues to happen. Not only are they taken off the streets, but then once they're in the system, you would think there would be some way to keep track of them. No, that's not happening. Look, folks, October 18th, it's coming up. No Kings Day 2.0. Go check out nokings.org, that website. Find out what's happening in your area. Go out and let people know. Let this administration know exactly what you think about them. They got one going on in Miami. Just saying. Be mad, be outraged. Demand accountability. You know I am. Katie Phang here. We launched the Katie Phang News Channel in partnership with the Midas Touch Network so we could bring you the latest in legal and political news. Straight, no chaser. So if you're a fellow truth teller, hit that subscribe button and share the word about this channel so we can build a high information America together.